All right, welcome to another episode of No Investment Advice. We got Jack and Bilal here today. Trung is in Asia, so it's just us two this week. We'll be carrying the torch. Jack, what's been going on, mate? What's been going on in the last week?
What have we been doing, boys? I think I had my parents visiting for a few weeks. Just finished building a fence. My hands.
You've been working on this fence for like 2 weeks, man. It's crazy.
Mate, a little manual labor, a little flavor of it. It was it's so much fun, but definitely catching up on my screen time now.
Yeah. Have you noticed that already? You're just back in the house, just on the phone the whole time.
Yeah, it's mate, it was so much fun being outside for that amount of time, but it makes a material difference. Like spending 8 hours away from the computer every day. So I got some
you mean material difference, literally, like in visualized values, material
output, indeed.
Yeah,
but
completely.
It was nice to take a break, man. How about you?
Yeah, well, I'm just coming off. I came back from upstate. I was in Woodstock. That was fun. And then coming off a high this weekend with Arsenal beating Tottenham. Been reliving that the whole
London
weekend has
derby.
been. It's like, was it on Saturday? I think the whole weekend's just better. It's like, I mean, for people who don't follow football, it's like the biggest rivalry in the UK, pretty much, in the Premier League is Arsenal, Tottenham. Local
it was
rivals.
a trouncing as well, wasn't it? 3-1.
Yeah, we 3-1, and it was not just like it wasn't just like luck. It was like we deserved it. We're like dominated, and it's like years of progress culminating in this moment, and it was very, very satisfying. So
enjoying top of the table, aren't they?
Top of the table, and then we saw Man City smash Man United 6-3 the next day. So it's been a crazy. It's gonna be, for people who follow football, it's the craziest season of our lifetimes because the World Cup's gonna start in November. So they're gonna stop the leagues and then go to the World Cup in Qatar. And then come back, and that's going to throw everything off because people are going to come back injured mentally. Imagine like winning the World Cup and coming back and being motivated to go to Stoke on a Tuesday night or something like that. So no disrespect to Stoke, but you know what I mean? It's going to be it's going to be very interesting. I think it could be one of those Leicester seasons, you know, like where something weird happens, but I think Man City are going to win because it's too crazy. So yeah. We'll save that for a football podcast. I don't want to bore the people who aren't into sports. But yeah, really, really cool times right now for Arsenal fans. All right, mate, let's get on. Trung is not here, but we got to honor him with a meme of the week. And this is the one. There's only one place to do it. This was shared in our group chat. And obviously, well, our Telegram group chat, but also...
he knew about it, right?
Yeah. Well, also within our three-way group chat, because Trung was the first to share it. I feel like he must have put this part together where he's put the top part with the screenshot underneath.
Oh, yeah. For he's people who this up.
Yeah. For people who are just listening and not watching on YouTube, first of all, click through on YouTube if you want to see it in the link below in the show notes. But this is Trung's tweet from, I don't remember when. It was like, what, April 2022.
That's what it says, April 4th, yeah.
April 4th, yeah. So it's you know, Elon Musk from the SNL skit that was really famous. And basically it was a funny meme that we've talked about. We've probably done this as meme of the week before. But what's more important is underneath, this is a screenshot from Elon Musk, Brett Taylor and Parag Agrawal, and it's their group chat because in the last week Elon Musk his texts have kind of come public and leaked or whatever because of the court case or whatever, and we can see these three were sharing Trung's meme in their group chat, and obviously big deal for our boy Trung. And Jack, how did you feel when Trung sent this in the group chat, mate?
Well, who's Brett Taylor? He's the CEO of Salesforce.
No. He's the Twitter chair, and Parag Agrawal is the CEO of Twitter. So this is before it all kicked off in a negative way. I think they were kind of joking around, and the caption was something like, you know, Twitter's meeting today or board meeting today or something like that. So the actual Twitter board, the people on the board and Elon was sharing this as a joke. So
about it.
Pretty cool. Obviously, Trung was over the moon, and I would be
Trunk's
as well.
Losing his mind over that, yeah. And he's probably gone into the list and searched his name because it didn't show the picture, right? So he's had to go and dig and find that
with the manual URL.
Who
like,
better? Oh,
yeah. Completely.
The
But
Google slides coming together.
There we go. That was it. So that had to be meme of the week. So just to let people know what we're talking about this week, we're going to talk about Mr. Beast. He's come up quite a bit recently, just because I think he's been doing quite a lot of press and like going on other people's podcasts. But there was apparently a $1 billion offer for all of his companies and his channels and stuff like that. And we're going to kind of talk about that idea of, should he have taken something like that, and what it might be in the future. We're also going to talk about Kim Kardashian. Never thought I'd say that on this pod. Our boy Gary Gensler has been talking about her and tweeting out about her in the last few days, as it related to her pumping some bags last year. Her and a bunch of other celebrities, and kind of what it means for that space. I think she's got a big fine. Maybe it's like $1.5 million from when I originally read it, or something like that. So we're going to talk about that.
Bilal,
go on.
While just before, I think as we started this meeting, Musk agrees to buy Twitter at $54 a share.
Breaking news.
$54.20.
Is that confirmed? Because I saw before we were recording there was like an offer or something, but is it confirmed?
So Twitter stock, this is CNN, Twitter stock was halted twice and rose 13% midday trading Tuesday following reports that Elon Musk has proposed to move forward with his deal at the originally agreed upon price.
Damn. Okay.
So another NIA prediction comes true, or a step closer to becoming true.
Exactly. All right. Well, since we've just talked about it, what do you reckon, mate? Do you think there's anything else to add there in terms of like things we weren't really expecting
in this deal?
Yeah, in that deal. Yeah.
I don't know. I thought all of the legal stuff was basically an attempt to get the price down, right? It's like all of the things that weren't disclosed about how many accounts aren't real, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I have a feeling that, I've always had this feeling that Twitter has been this kind of missing link between all of the companies that he's working on, all the ideas that he has, extend the light of human consciousness. If that's that's the overarching mission, then Twitter is probably as close as you can get to a platform that aggregates consciousness. People are like putting their thoughts into it in real time. It probably represents, even this like global political conflicts play out on Twitter. It's a very, very close proxy to what's happening in the world. If it's obviously their extreme, I don't know. I don't want to say close proxy in terms of like Twitter is real life, but it is definitely where a lot of massive things occur, right? So
yeah, it's like completely. And especially like we've talked about culturally, how important it is. And it's just a public town square or whatever is the phrase people use for it. So, yeah, I mean, that's exciting if that actually happens.
One thing that is related that we didn't bring up, I didn't actually watch it, but AI Day, was that last week or the weekend?
I didn't see this properly, no.
Yeah, Tesla AI Day, so they brought out the robot.
I saw the robot videos, yeah.
All I've seen is like people saying this is... Honda was knocking out robots like this 15 years ago. That's the critique that you see on Twitter. So I'm definitely not qualified or researched enough to know how significant what they presented was. But again, I just think Twitter is like this thing that can augment all of the things that all of the Musk businesses are about and problems they're working on. So.
And they finally dropped the edit button after all this, all the chat. Did you see that? I was like, is this even worth bringing up? But it kind of is. We've been talking about it for such a long time. That's officially like I don't know if everyone's got access to it or if it's just like an early beta thing.
Or I think it's blue, maybe Twitter Blue, or maybe it's a segment within Twitter. Do you pay for that? Trump's
I don't pay for it now. I'm hard. Yeah, I know it is. Yeah. I'm I'm not really tweeting for a little while, so I'm not really using it enough. But so anyway, that's pretty cool. I guess we'll probably wait till next week to do more of a proper deep dive on it. But that was breaking news as we're here. Also, before we get into Mr. Beast and Kim Kardashian, we're also going to do some of the AMA questions we didn't get to. If you want to submit those questions in the future, make sure you're in the Telegram group. That's normally where we post. And we've got like a bunch of questions in there. Me and Jack will get through some of those in the second half of the show. So this is Mr. Beast. Let's get on to that. So Mr. Beast, if if you've never heard of him, he's basically the biggest YouTuber in the world. He's been on a little bit of a rampage on the podcast scene right now. So I listened to the full episode on Flagrant, which is like a 4-hour interview. And it's just more like a hang with him and a bunch of the Flagrant boys, Andrew Schultz, Mark Gagnon, Akash Singh, a few others. And there was one snippet that's been doing the rounds, and it was around him saying that he was offered $1 billion for all of his businesses and channels. And I think people wrote in like a misleading way, like Mr. Beast was offered $1 billion for his channel, which is not the real headline. The real headline is everything, and includes him basically, right? It means you're gonna have to come and work on Mr. Beast if we were buying this. Secondly, to clarify, it wasn't like a firm offer, like here's a letter and like we've got $1 billion for you, but he said it was someone who had the capacity to do it, and it seemed like a pretty legit thing. And he said he would consider at like the 10 billion amount. So I wanted to get your take on this, because I think you might have heard part of this episode as well. I'm not sure if you heard the whole thing.
Yeah, I listened about the first half, I think.
Yeah. So what do you think? Because a lot of people who don't have any context about this are like, what, a YouTuber got offered $1 billion and they said no? Like, that sounds crazy, but to people like us it might sound not that crazy at all.
Yeah, I mean, if the rest of the interview, I think, or the beginning of the interview, is him basically talking about the fact that he's doing whatever he wants to do, and he's like, to use the term we've used before, post-economic, like you have, like his optionality is already kind of infinite, I would imagine. Like he doesn't need, I don't know, maybe that's a strong way to put it. It just feels like he's already doing the things he wants to be doing, building the thing he wants to be building. He's not constrained by capital. Only, like, everything goes back into videos, or a good amount of it goes back into the videos. And I think changing your circumstances like that might affect your relationship with the thing you're doing, right? I don't think people often take that into consideration, where it's like, no one's buying that just for, like, it becomes much less valuable to the person who owns it if he's not involved, right?
Yeah,
so
and especially the channel itself, you can't really do it without him at the moment. Like, he is the face. It's not like just someone who's like outsourcing all that part. Like, it's Mr. Beast. It's like his personal brand.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I think there are maybe a good like halfway proxy is like a Barstool. You know, like Dave Portnoy isn't completely Barstool, but it's a good portion of it, and they've been able to like build this massive media
beyond just him. Yeah,
goes into all these other, like, can hire all these other people and build brands around other, even the shows maybe have a bit more equity in them than the person, or like their level kind of, and you can bring people in and out. But Mr. Beast is like, it's built on one person's personality, reputation, ideas, all that stuff. So yeah, I don't know, maybe, like having that money but still being attached to the thing doesn't really change anything. Like maybe being able to sell something for $1 billion and then go and do something even more ridiculous with $1 billion would be appealing to something like that. But in that deal, like, you would just be in the same situation you're in, with more money in your bank account. And I'm like, again, I don't know his personal situation, but I'm sure he can take care of everything he wants to take care of financially right now.
Yeah, and I think he's also, just again, without knowing him personally, obviously, like he comes across very much like this is what he's wanted to do since he's like 11 years old, and he's now living the dream. Like, and he really does care about like legacy. Like, he literally says, I want to be the best YouTuber of all time. I want to be, that is what he cares about. Like, he literally hasn't watched like films, like basic films that we've all watched. He just, and I find this actually not the best thing. I think he for someone who creates narrative like online, I think he'll probably gain from like watching a film once in a while. But anyway, like he's like, no, I just was always watching YouTube. Like watching a 2-hour film were like 5 YouTube videos I could have watched in that time, and that was going to compound. Like he's quite intense about it. I hope that in like 10 years time he won't necessarily be like that. I think it's really cool what he's doing. Like he should do whatever the hell he wants, but I do find it like really kind of like at a crazy level at the moment. And I also personally find it almost like a little young and immature in a way, like because I think he's just got this thing in his head of like, I need to be the number one, and like he's like very competitive, which, you know, is obviously what has propelled him to what he's doing. But yeah, there's certain things like I think as you get older and wiser and you see people who have even had that success, they realize like, oh, watching a film, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you know, it sounds so obvious to us. But anyway, that's one thing. The second thing is, I think the value of it, I think a lot of people just don't have any context because they just think, oh, how is a YouTube channel worth $1 billion, right? And that's not what they would be buying. It is Mr. Beast Burger, that chocolate, was it Beastables or something?
Something, yeah.
And basically all the different businesses they're setting up. And I don't know the exact numbers, but I remember seeing basically they're already on pace for like 100 million in revenue. I think for Mr. Beast Burger or something like that, from my understanding, not just a new one store, but the kind of ghost kitchens.
So
it's already in like a private equity world, you can times a multiple on that and it'll be worth, you know, $1 billion plus within a few years, if not already. So if you just look at those and you take that brand, and then most importantly, you take the distribution, which is the most important thing here, that is what they're going to keep doing. It's going to keep launching new companies, new offshoots of everything they're doing. So it's incredible. And the cool thing is to see him actually execute it, where I feel like 99% of like creators or like YouTubers might not really have the ability to do this. And I don't mean that in like a, you know, in a bad way, but just...
No, it's just true, yeah.
Yeah, like most creative people who are just straight up creative, like creating videos, that's what you become really good at. To then like compartmentalize that and then become really good at actually hiring people and giving them the room to actually run with it, which is what he seems to be doing, and not over... you know, stressing about like, I need to know every detail of what a best burger is in the world or whatever it is. I think that's actually pretty incredible at his age. Like to, you know, he's obviously a very special person already, but just the fact he's doing that at such a young age is pretty incredible. And then you marry that with the ambition of he wants to be a billionaire. He actually wants to, you know, he even talked about being president. Like that was something that came up in that interview, which sounds again really stupid, but fast forward 20 years from now and he's like 42 or something, and he's got he's got 1 billion followers, and that generation that have been watching him is now 35-year-olds, right? Like, I mean,
100 million. Yeah, you're right. It's crazy. Like as a percentage of the world population, like 100 million subscribers is crazy. That's like single-digit % of world population.
Yeah. And if you think of the US population, that's obviously the 100 million or whatever. How many subscribers he's got right now?
105 million on YouTube. Yeah, so it's almost.
And that's the main channel.
America, yeah.
And that's the main channel. He's also got all the translated channels, like the Spanish channel, Arabic channel, etc. So I think
legend.
Yeah, pretty incredible. So yeah, I think it sounds crazy to a lot of people, but in the grand scheme of business, $1 billion isn't crazy for the number one in a category, and especially one that has that amount of reach. So I think he's really smart to not take something like that. And like you said, the most important thing is he wants to, you know, have fun and do the things he wants to do. And in his words, he would have to essentially be an employee in his own company, and that is not something he'd want to do. So yeah, mad respect. Do you think he could ever become president?
Yeah, no problem. Probably. Like with that distribution.
Yeah.
Crazy to think about it. But it's also like, I don't know. I think it's like uncharted territory in so many ways. It's like, has there ever been a person that's that famous that doesn't have to go through an intermediary? Probably not. Like there's very few people that have that reach that don't have somebody between them and their audience, or like an institution that controls the distribution of what they're doing. So yeah, it is an attention game. Obviously you have to say things that resonate with people, and he's obviously figured that out for entertainment. So I don't know how it'd be a controversial conversation to talk about the parallels between like making YouTube videos about like, I don't know, giving away money and politics. Basically the same idea, isn't it?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I didn't even see that connection there. Wait,
it's
so
stimmies.
You're right. Basically, giving people money on the internet and recording it and put it all over YouTube and TikTok is actually a more efficient way of giving people money, because you're essentially, as a politician, you're giving people money to spread goodwill.
Allocating resources, right? That's what they do.
Resources.
Yeah.
That is hilarious. I didn't even think of that, man. That is so fun. And probably 10,000 times more efficient, because you're only giving it to a small amount of people. I will say, all jokes aside, he seems to be a very philanthropic person as well. Like, he's also got
he did mention he wants to give all his money away, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And he said if he were to ever run for president, he would basically give it all away and then show that he's not bought. And then he's got all these soup kitchens or whatever, and seems to like genuinely want to do a lot of good, which is really cool to see. But yeah, really, what a crazy dude. I mean, I've now listened to his before the last 6 months. I hadn't really like listened to much of his stuff. I honestly haven't watched much of his videos, but I've listened to him on several pods, probably more than 10 hours now, with Flagrant, Joe Rogan, and Colin Samir, I think, might have had him on. And just, you in 10, 15, 20 hours, you get to really hear someone, and he's like pretty unique, special guy. So pretty cool.
And incredible dude.
Really cool. All right, anything else on that before we move on to Kim Kardashian?
No, we're doing an NIA prediction. He's never selling it. How about that?
Oh, okay. I like it. Yeah, fair enough. All right, Kim Kardashian, Gary Gensler's tweet said, today the SEC, we charged Kim Kardashian for unlawfully touting a crypto security. I think keyword security here. This case is a reminder that when celebrities or influencers endorse investment opportunities, including crypto asset securities, it doesn't mean those investment products are right for all investors. Jack, what is your hottest take here, mate?
Yeah, let's have a look at this. Well, you know what? I was going to say this is a good little segue from the last conversation, because SEC is just going for max distribution on this one. Who better?
I love that.
Right? It's just like...
Yeah, who better than Kim Kardashian?
Who better than Kim Kardashian? Who's not going to write about that? No outlet that has ever... I mean, from the New York Times to probably, I don't know what the other end of the spectrum from the New York Times would be, but like niche celebrity publications, all that kind of stuff. Like, you're going to get press coverage for everything just as a function of it's Kim Kardashian. So I would go out on a limb and say, like, she's not the worst offender, but she obviously has a material amount of reach too. So you could also make the argument that the people with the biggest platforms have the most responsibility in making recommendations like that. But in the grand scheme of things, there are more nefarious activities going on, right? But this is
definitely
send a message. I mean, I'm looking at the Ethereum Max price right now.
Yeah, to clarify, it was for Ethereum Max, right?
Yeah, so, let me read you the price of Ethereum Max. 0.00000000542.
What was the highest? Did you see the highest?
It was still in the
0 point something
zeros. Yeah.
What's sad about that is what they do. Actually, not knowing anything about Ethereum Max. Go on. What was the high?
Sorry, I was on. Somebody probably spun up a token yesterday because of the news story.
Ethereum Max.
This one only has 1 day of trading
got
activity.
it. Okay. So wrong one. Okay.
So I'm sure it was. I'm sure that the chart looks similar though. It was just because I remember Floyd Mayweather was wearing an Ethereum Max hat for one of the fights.
Yeah, I remember that.
Maybe the Jake. Who fought him? Logan Paul, was it?
It was Jake Paul or Logan Paul as well. No, Logan Paul. Yeah. So, I mean, So the question here is, there's a few things. One is, I mean, someone was sharing like a screenshot of what she had shared on her story, and it was, I will say, like a little bad, because it basically said, this is not financial advice, which is quite hilarious in itself, but my friends have been getting in on this thing. And it's like, like, and you're Kim Kardashian, you know, you're not a podcast called No Investment Advice. You're literally somewhat the most famous person in the world. So yeah, and it's also like saying my friend is getting into this. That's like, it's not really disclosing it. I think that was also the problem
that's
here.
The problem. It's not a paid ad. And I think, I don't know what the, it's a definite message to be sent to people with platforms that are basically promoting without disclosure their like interest in this thing. She was paid $250,000 to promote it, I think, and probably took some of that compensation in the token itself. Again, I don't know if that's true, so don't hold me to that. But I would imagine that's how a lot of this stuff works, right? It's like you have material upside attached to your endorsement of this thing, and that's when it starts to get
a little shady.
Naughty.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing to call out, and this was a question in the AMA, I think, was it Dylan? I can't remember who asked this, but I think it was Dylan, asked essentially our take on this, and specifically around securities. And I think that is interesting. Obviously, we had Sailor on the pod. He was going all out to say Ethereum was a security, right? I think unregistered security or something. This is Ethereum Max. It's not Ethereum. But interestingly, I don't know enough about the legal side of this thing, so I'm not going to try to pretend. But I'm wondering if this is going to set precedent for like other assets, crypto assets. Are they all going to just become securities? Is there going to be an exception for Bitcoin? You know, we don't know I don't know the details of this, but anything else on that one?
Yeah, it's not great. It's basically the thesis, right? It's like for the crypto's reputation at large too, where if you want to dissuade a large number of people from participating in permissionless markets of any kind, the average person's not going to know the difference between Ethereum Max and Ethereum. They're just going to say, "Oh, scam, crypto's a scam." It sets back the adoption of legitimate crypto projects by a good amount, I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
My final
I mean,
thought.
I did an interview yesterday for Creator Lab. It's coming out next week with, Jesus Christ, my mind's gone complete. But Annie Duke, who's she works with First Round Capital nowadays, but she's got a famous book called Thinking in Bets, and she was a famous poker player. Really cool. But she's, really smart, working in tech. And like just talking to her, someone of her level, about crypto, it was very much the old narrative, and like it felt like she was saying, "Oh well, I remember this hype in the last year, and everyone was talking about Bitcoin being an inflation hedge, but now where are all those people when inflation is super high?" Which is a fair criticism. But I would say like we talk a lot about like, let's say Bitcoin, Ethereum specifically, being primarily driven by confidence and not just usage, essentially. Like obviously usage and utility, you'd hope, is the main reason anyone uses those things. But in reality, everything is partly a meme and based on the confidence in that security or asset or whatever you want to call it. So I just think someone like her, who actually is close enough to, like, she's literally working with startups. She's working with like some of the most famous investors in Silicon Valley. Even someone like her, who's pretty close to it, is having that feeling in this bear market. And I feel like that is indicative of like these sort of stories are going to make that even more so the case. It's going to give someone like her like that loose headline of, "Oh yeah, well that was a scam," and you just group it all together, like you said, especially when the name is Ethereum Max. So yeah, I think that isn't a good thing. At the same time, honestly, for me personally, it's like you kind of do need to call out these like bad actors as well. And long term, if this was ever going to be a real thing, you need to be able to have rules and regulations in place. Like there's nothing wrong with rules and regulations if they actually like filter out bad stuff. So yeah, I don't think it's the end of the world, but it is interesting the way they kind of came out. It just seems like a bit of a movie, right? Like Gary Gensler is like tweeting about Kim Kardashian and some made up crypto coin. It's like super weird.
Yeah, but it's weirdly enough, it's like the new normal, shall we say. This is like the
completely.
zeitgeist now, with the way people thinking about money and talking about, like, I think when we started this podcast, we basically said, and it's probably one of the catalysts for why we're still doing it, is like investing, money, markets have all become like pop culture now. I would think 40 years ago, 50 years ago, the like influencers of that time and financial markets were just way more like boring out of this is my assumption based on what I've been told by people a good amount older than me, is like nobody even really thought about finance in that way. It's just this like even investment banking at the beginning. I think maybe the Wolf of Wall Street unpacks this, where it's like derivatives and markets went like steroid turbo mode in the like late 70s, early 80s. And since then, it's just like leaked into pop culture way more. And then add the internet to the equation. It's like everybody has Robinhood on their phone, you know, crypto coin X, Y, and Z is like
exactly
5 minutes away. And then add like ridiculous economic pressure and social media. You're seeing how well X person is doing. Like it's just like a weird, pervasive part of life now, and it's just it feels normal to me.
Well, I think in our parents' generation, I can't speak for the US, but in the UK anyway, it felt like in my small world, the equivalent for them, instead of meme stocks and you know all the stuff we've got involved with, it was buy property, buy real estate. That was like the like my parents
the wealth meme.
The wealth meme, exactly. And they're still around today, obviously, and rightly so, in many ways. But that was the leading narrative of, if you save a little bit of money, you buy your own house, and then you buy the next, and then you buy a house and rent it out. It's always a good investment. Like there are parallels between what is happening now, and honestly, like the FIRE movement of S&P 500 forever is going to go up 8 to 10%. And I'm a little worried because like that could have been a little, I mean, if you bought, you know, I shared with you that video of Chamath talking about the like 40% of mortgages in the UK apparently are interest only.
Yes.
And the price, you know, the interest rates are obviously going up everywhere. And now for a lot of people who don't even realize, like their mortgage payment's going to go up like crazy if they hadn't, you know, locked something in. Added to like, you know, cost of living crisis, energy bills going up, you know, inflation everywhere, unemployment probably will pick up if we get into a proper recession. So yeah, not looking good, but yeah, it's a bit of a crazy time. But I would say that idea of like property for our parents is, even my dad who worked in banking, anytime I talk to him about stocks, he's like, yeah, but that's like speculation. And I'm like, well, yeah, but everything's speculation. Like there's still speculation in buying a house. You don't know if you bought in 2007 just before everything crashed, or if you bought in 1992 and like 20 years later you look like a genius. And so there's all these sort of like narratives that have been around forever, and now we've replaced them with certain types of narratives, but they're not. I guess the question is like, which one hangs around? Which one becomes Lindy and evergreen? I still think real estate probably isn't gonna go away in that way. In terms of like the meme of it all, unless there's like a crazy crash again, you know.
And it's like there's a finite component to that too.
That's true.
I think Kyla Scanlon, you know, she makes TikTok videos. She's
the
now
singer, yeah. No, joking.
She's
Did you mind? Yeah.
Yeah. She's contributing to Bloomberg Opinion now, and she did a great. So check that out. She did a great video on like American housing crisis, basically, where there's the supply issue is so extreme, where we're just not building enough houses. So, you know, like the economics 101 interpretation of that is just a pure, like, there's X number of people that need a place to live, and there's Y number of places to live, and the market will respond to that in like allocating more and more resources towards that until there's a you know, a change in those dynamics. So it feels like a more, I can see why people believe in that more than they do with Ethereum Max.
Yeah, completely.
Let's just say that.
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, like you said, limited supply. Actually, and also genuine utility, right? Like people live in a house.
There, yeah.
And that idea of, it's always like that. You speak to people, even my age, and you'll say, like, my friend's trying to buy a place here in Brooklyn, and it's way over the amount he should probably be putting, buying for. And now, even with the interest rates going up, what he was going to get last year versus this year is like 2-3x, right? His monthly payment. But he's still really set on like, no, but this is the best thing long term, which might be the case, who knows? But it's just this thing of like, oh, no matter what, it's always going to be a good investment. And if enough people believe that, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
Yeah. I mean, like, Brooklyn is another meme to add into the meme of property, right? It's like,
oh my God, yeah.
People get to a certain age, you live in America or you live anywhere in the world, and you want to be in that place. There's not that many. If you want to live in Brooklyn, yeah, you could argue that there are other cities that have similar dynamics, but not many, and they're not going to be. It's like the sailor argument, right? It's like, I think he uses a Miami Beach analogy and Manhattan all the time. It's like there's so little space, they've had to like build up 900 feet, however big those buildings are, which is just almost like a physical manifestation of a market, right? It's like literally
building up
vertically.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
I like the way your brain thinks, Jack.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, I think it's there's probably some visual analogy there. Yeah, where you have to be in this place. So the only way,
it sounds like a visualized value in the making here with the building going up, or maybe like multiple buildings, like like a chart. What are they called again? The chart where you got the green and red lines. I should know this, but like when you're looking at a chart,
candles.
Candles, exactly. But the candles would be like flats or like apartment blocks. There we go.
Yeah, man. And then there's probably amazing historical data for that too, where these metropolis centers. Maybe COVID was like the only real shock to that in the last amount of recorded history. I knew people that were re-signing their leases in New York in 2020 for just ridiculously low prices, and landlords panicking, selling stuff for nothing.
And then a year later, it was like $1,000 more or something crazy like that. Like it was insane amounts of increase.
But the age-old adage, isn't it? The buy when there's blood in the streets. That's those people are all going to be all right. People who are snapping up property in the middle of the panic.
Sell when people are buying monkey gifts for 500 grand. Yeah. That's the old adage. Is that from Socrates or something?
That one's going to age well. Perfect. Yeah,
100%. All right, so that was a good tangent. I wasn't expecting us to go there, but definitely. The only thing I was going to say, actually, last thing on real estate, without knowing too much about it, friends of mine on the West Coast who own property, or I've even seen this online, people trying to sell property right now, just in Silicon Valley or San Francisco specifically, everyone was like, New York's dead and San Francisco's dead, but people have moved to Miami and Nashville and stuff like that, which to a certain extent has happened. But New York right now is nowhere near what it was, right? Compared to the pandemic, it's people, the rents are crazy. There's 50 people waiting for an application. I don't know if it's the same. I doubt it's the same in San Francisco, because a lot of people have actually left, because of remote work. And in tech, there's more people who actually are able to do remote work versus in New York, anyone who's working in a legal firm or traditional companies, a lot of them were the first to get back in the office. So it's not to say macro long term there won't be more remote work. Obviously that's happening and already has happened, but I think certain places like San Francisco just getting hit even harder. So I think that is potentially a really big issue for if you own property there. That might be not the best thing in the next 6 to 12 months.
Well, I think the San Francisco meme was already on the downtrend even before COVID, true. Right? There was so much mismanagement at the governmental level, at least that's how it's portrayed on the internet. I've spent time in San Francisco, but I don't live there. So I might be extrapolating from like all of the most extreme cases, but there was like a reputation beginning to form before COVID that like San Francisco wasn't as pleasant as it once was.
Yeah, and you saw people just going into Target and just taking a bunch of stuff, no one stopping them, and apparently it was because of decriminalization or something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is true, similar to you. Like I've just heard this, and I mean,
all-in guys love this, don't they? They go
the all-in lads love
yeah.
running onto it. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean. And then obviously the other part, honestly, was the homeless situation, both in LA and San Francisco has got like a lot worse as well. So,
mate, California though, like we'll say, is just like has a monopoly on the best geographic features on the planet, man. It is the best,
beautiful
in the world. The beach, the water, the mountains, the forest, the desert, the food,
wine country. Mate. Yeah, there's everything there.
Bangs. There's a reason why it's people want to live there, man. Bang. Even if it's like, oh, there might be a there might be a massive tidal wave or earthquake that's going to wipe out everything at any given moment. It's like, beach is nice. We're going to live here anyway.
Yeah. You're like, we'll risk it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, beautiful place. Definitely a beautiful place. Yeah. All right, mate. Let's get on to the AMA questions for part 2 of the show. Anything else on Kim K before we move on? I'm just going to skip.
Go on. The fine was like 1.5 million, and a lot of people frame that up as like the marketing expense, right? Cost of doing business. It's the same as like JP Morgan getting fined a couple like 100 million for doing X number of $1 billion of illicit transactions. And I don't know, JP Morgan, I'm just using as an example there, but HSBC, laundering money for some cartel, and here's basically a slap on the wrist relative to what
you hate HSBC, man.
I hate HSBC. I hate them. By the way, they closed down all my accounts last year, so just out.
Did you get your money out?
Some Bitcoin or something.
Oh, no, wait. They closed out. What? You lost your money in there?
Yeah, it's not a lot. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was like, I think I probably missed the deadline, so they sent something in the post. Okay. Said like, I had like $100 in there or something, and nothing crazy. Got it. I was already like trying to get out of there, but they... Yeah.
Not the best experience.
Not advised.
Yeah, the opposite. All right.
That is financial advice.
Don't use financial advice. Yeah. All right, AMA, let's get straight to it. Thanks for everyone who submitted questions. Let's just kick off. We kind of got to start with this one. Warren said, what did you get done this week?
Nice.
And for anyone who didn't see that was a question from Elon Musk to Parag Agrawal, I think, the CEO of Twitter. In one of those texts, he basically was like, what did you guys get done this week? Like talking about Twitter. It was like the most incredible question. You can answer that, or we can move on to the next question if you actually had something.
I told you already. I finished defense, and I'm back, man. I'm back on the visualized value output.
Been smashing it. Yeah, I've been seeing some beautiful ones up.
Putting some hours in. Thank you, mate.
All right. Yeah, same for me. I've been planning Q4 because it's, we're living life in quarters, and a lot of like work related stuff, but also honestly a lot of personal stuff. I'll be traveling a lot. I'm going to be going to California, upstate again, to London for Christmas, friend's bachelor party, and then maybe doing a bigger trip in Q1 to get out of the cold. So there's a lot of things going on there, and just been keeping it clean, man. That's been the theme for the last few months. Been going real hard. Yeah, been picking up a bunch of sports. That's been fun. But yeah, apart from that, just the regular stuff. So I didn't really build much this week, but it was getting quite a lot done, so I feel good about it. All right, building in the bear. Chance asked, what are y'all building in the bear? That was my best American accent.
Abysmal.
I have to say, over text, I do say you all quite a lot to people. It really throws people off because it sounds like I'm like a Southern belle from Texas. But and then when they speak to him on the phone, they're like, what? This guy is from East London or something. But yeah, so what are you building in the bear, Jack?
Well, I got a couple, signed a couple deals. Can't disclose them yet, but doing a couple of collaborations with Visualized Value for some equity and some tech startup. So we'll be doing some brand stuff, some diagrammatic marketing materials to explain some tech products. Got a couple of books.
Diagrammatic, what does that mean?
So like the visualized value approach, basically diagrams that explain how a platform works or something like that.
Oh, sick. Okay, cool. That makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Yeah, so a little, actually this is, I don't think I told you boys this yet. I bought venture with 2vs.com.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
that is sick. That is a sick name.
Yeah, thank you, mate. So that's going to be.
And for anyone who's in your Discord knows, everyone loves using the 2Vs for the brubs. And anything where you can throw in a V or a W, you get the Vs involved.
Yeah, that's another thing is like this, probably a few people listening to this have read network state. So we're taking
VV. Thing, yeah?
We're taking VV to the network state.
Oh,
2 W's in the network.
Okay. Sick.
Which, you know, there's this tweet by Vitalik that's basically answering someone's question of how do you start a network state. It's basically his summation, which has been like what we've been doing is like you build the communication layer first, right? You put out stuff that is a conduit for connecting like-minded people. You build a communication layer, you have a community, you make that really robust, and then you can begin to think about the frame I've been using is like, what's your export? So if you're a nation state, your place in the world is determined by what you can export. If you're a network state, same thing, right? But the limiting factor to truly exist on the internet is what you can collaborate on virtually and what you can produce and sell virtually. So we've been running a few little experiments in the
sick! I love that,
and building some little products and stuff.
Yeah, the idea is like, are you selling Chinese goods made in a factory, or are you selling financial services like the UK used to or does still?
Right.
You know, or are you making art? Like, yeah, that's a great. I love that idea. All right, so whenever you can share more on that sounds very exciting. I love the name, first of all, Venture 2Vs.
Thank you.
That's perfect. Yeah, I don't know how I didn't think of that. We've talked about like investing stuff before, and I don't know how that didn't ever come up. But so yeah, do you know when you're able to talk more about any of those two things, like the?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and build a little site with a couple of the case studies, and then we can do a little chat.
All right, cool. We'll add that to the docket. Perfect. All right, let's move on to the next one. Joe asked, OpenSEA versus LooksRare. I know we've talked about LooksRare way back in the day, but this might be a quick one because I'm not using really either at the moment. So for Jack, you've been more involved with NFTs, obviously selling them, collecting them. What's the situation? Is there a perception change of any of those?
Yeah, excuse me. OpenSea obviously got like first mover network effect. That's where people set up a lot of people set up their first wallet or interacted with the first time. So there's a lot of lock-in with like listings, their email notifications that people are getting from there. And then LooksRare feels like this response to that incumbent, even though this is like a fresh new industry. This is like a challenger brand of a challenger brand, I guess. OpenSea weren't competing with anyone necessarily. Like they're the first NFT marketplace that, at least at that kind of scale. And LooksRare is definitely built with different incentives in mind. Obviously, they launched a token. They're trying to drive value back to the people who use the platform in a different way than OpenSea. And there's a lot of talk at the moment about OpenSea is like censoring collections, and there's like a good amount of control at the top level in OpenSea versus LooksRare, which to me feels like it's built more on the tenets of Web3, right? It more of the philosophies that are agreed upon of how Web3 products should be built by the like diehard community. LooksRare feels like it fulfills that promise. So
got it.
But in terms of volume, NFTs across the board are just pretty flat. So
yeah, been pretty nuked, right? Like in terms of
but
volume.
You're going to save money shopping on LooksRare. So if you're buying an NFT, you're going to pay less on LooksRare, just as a function of there's a 2.5% fee on everything OpenSea sells.
Got it. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, and especially if you're spending a lot of money like people were, that 2.5% adds up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the argument, I guess, becomes you can get more eyes on your thing on OpenSea, so you're paying the fee for distribution. There's like reasons that markets function in the way they function. It's not like everybody just use this. Like the distribution of activity does come into that as well. But I mean, I'm still bag holding my looks tokens. So let's hope for a comeback there.
Holding a few things there still, man. Me too. Yeah. I don't think I've pretty much sold any NFTs. I'm probably, again, absolutely done. But yeah, it's all good. All right, there's a couple questions here for me. I'll just try tackling them. Quick one. Trung asked, I don't know if this one was a joke, but I'll do it quickly. Trung asked, why did Bilal shut down the Arsenal blog? Technically, it never shut down, but yeah, I mean, in reality, yeah, I've not been active on there for a long time. To put it in perspective, I did it for like 6-7 years. So it wasn't like I just started this thing for like a summer on my school break and then like never did it again. I did it for like quite a long time. I was 16 when I started it, so it was through my A-levels in the UK, which is before university, then all the way through university, and then after. So the kind of short answer is, like, I needed to focus on other stuff, obviously, like both university and then getting a job. And then I started working at Google, and that obviously took over. So just to keep it going was just too much, and I really wanted to focus my efforts. I find it very difficult. I'm already doing like multiple things, but just like I'm quite an all or nothing person. So when I'm doing it, I'm like writing on every single game and getting 20 writers, and you know, it's quite a lot to manage, and it didn't make that much money. It was just like small amounts on advertising. And this was before like everyone's building a newsletter and even big on social and doing video. Like that just wasn't happening at the time. So yeah, I still own it, the domain, and I actually moved over to creating a newsletter potentially on it, because I was like interested in maybe just doing it for jokes for myself, but I haven't really been doing it, so I still have it. But the short answer was, yeah, I got busy doing other stuff and I needed to focus on that, so that's why. But I still have not missed a game since that time. I watch every single game. I'm like pretty hardcore, and honestly I think I've become more hardcore in the last few years, even more than the past. So that might mean I end up doing something in it again, because it's just something I like naturally love, like more than most things. Yeah. So
man, it seems like the opportunity for it is just getting ludicrous too. Like the States picking up crazy on like watching it, and the fandom, like I've seen in the time that I've lived in the States, it's just ridiculous. Like the viewership between World Cups was like when it really flipped my understanding of how fast it was growing. I guess when there was the first, it probably was 2014. Was there a World Cup in 2014?
Yeah, I can't remember the dates, but yeah.
Whatever it was, there's 4 years between them. The first one I went to in New York was like nobody in the pub, and then the next 4 years later, you couldn't get in anywhere.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, on terms of football here, it's really picked up. And then even like the MLS has grown, but also just even... like I was listening to something this morning, the Arsenal away kit this year, like, you know, they sell the jerseys, it's the most successful kit launch they've ever had.
That's that black and gold or something, isn't it?
It's so good sick. Though. Yeah, it's beautiful. It sold 80% more than the home kit, which is also just something like, just shows like the level of commercialization. And Adidas have just basically paid a bunch of money up front to renew this early. And like that doesn't normally happen that much. So just like there is a lot more money coming into the sport overall, especially the Premier League. I will say on the flip side, like there's two parts of the equation. There's supply and demand. On the supply side, if you want to call it that, there's, you know, more podcasts than ever. You know, there's more fan channels.
That's true.
But also the appetite for that has also grown. So yeah, I think it's really interesting. You know, I would only ever do something if I felt like I could add something unique to it again, and I could actually fully commit to doing it properly. So yeah, it seems obvious for me to do something again though. If I had like 2-3 friends like the way us guys do this every week, I would just, that were of similar minded people.
Arsenal. Yeah.
That were Arsenal people, but also people who like building stuff, because that's the key. Because I have a bunch of friends who are Arsenal fans, but I need someone who's like you guys, who are like, you get I don't even have to ask you guys about, oh, we're going to put this out. We're going to create clips. We're going to do a podcast, whatever. If I'm just speaking to my friend who's a random Arsenal fan, they might be entertaining, but they need to have the appetite for the other stuff. So at the moment, I haven't had that. So that's the reason I haven't done more with it.
Respect.
There's one more question on for me, but I can come back to that just to give people a break from listening to me. Dustin asked, one thing you've changed your mind on. Sounds like a Tim Ferriss question. Anything that has come into mind for you, Jack?
One thing I've changed my mind on. I mean, over what time frame? Maybe since we've done the podcast, maybe that would be a nice let's
frame
set
for
something up. I think I've changed my mind on. I think some of the experience I've had with visualized value since we've been doing the podcast, maybe has been like, there's this really weird contrast between doing this and doing visualized value, because that is so like kind of regimented and it goes through this really specific filter. And I think I was way more, what's the word I'm going to use here, is like, not necessarily reserved, but more like the output was a little bit more scarce and focused. And going through the process of like just showing up every week and doing an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours has been like, it's been fun to work on that. And it's also like,
so you're talking about visualized valued 1 hour a week, or?
No, I'm talking about how different the output and the process is for producing this to visualize value. Where,
like the podcast you're saying?
Yeah, where it's like, in the beginning, I was like skeptical that we'd have enough to say, or like there'd be a reason to show up every week and talk for an hour and a half or 2 hours. But it's been a good, like, it does get me out thinking about different stuff, which is, I think, there are pros and cons to that, because you have the split focus.
Less focus, but also gives you room to not just be like just in that one little world.
Yeah, and that's been refreshing, honestly. Like, I would have gone a year ago or 2 years ago and been like, absolutely do not do anything else. But there's a huge caveat to that. It has to be additive in a different way, right? Like, it gets your brain going in a different way. Same way, like building a fence the last few weeks has been like, that's not necessarily the highest ROI activity you could possibly be doing, but like gets you doing something different and like changes the way you think about stuff. Even like the stuff I have to read and research and think about to have these conversations is completely different. So I guess to summarize, it's like, the way in which we've been doing this has been very like good for my creativity in a different way than I thought it would be.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about it. It sounds like if you're ever going to write a book, it's going to be like Zen and the Art of Garden Fences or something like that. Like, because that sounds like a very philosophical moment you just had there with your dad in the last week or two. But I know what you're saying. All jokes aside, like, just, it sounds so cliche, but like literally just being outside, not near your phone, is so obvious and everyone says it, but like, most people don't actually do it. And even for me, the last like month, if you look at my like step, like if you look at my Fitbit app, you just see, I think I was doing like 30,000 steps a day. Like, I was literally putting my phone, it's still on me, but I was literally listening to like books, long podcasts, going for like long walks in the sun, and like I would go for like 4 hours sometimes and just be like writing notes down and like just giving myself room to do that, which has been so nice. But honestly, when the weather gets a bit like this, it's getting grey, as you can see with my beanie on. You kind of like, you switch gears a little bit. It's like another season again, so you just like hone in a different way. But yeah, that's cool, man. I never thought of it like that. I'll answer did you finish yours, or was it? So an answer for me, I'll say more specifically, since we talk about crypto and stuff quite a lot, I'll say I'm still incredibly bullish on everything, in crypto, but I will say I think I caught myself being in that euphoria moment a little bit, like too much maybe, and honestly, like talking to Michael Saylor on the pod, as much as it was amazing, if I was being objective with myself and said I was listening to that and didn't know anyone on that pod or him, or have the context of the goat thing in the background, like the goat on the mountain, I would say that guy was chatting mad crazy stuff. Like, what are you talking about here? And I would probably leave it feeling less bullish on Bitcoin specifically because of the kind of maxi rhetoric. And this is obviously just like an isolated thing. I also think he does a lot of good for the space in some ways, and obviously I'm a fan of him as a guy, but like specifically like the idea of like maxis in any realm, like whether that's Bitcoin or Ethereum or a religion or nutrition science, like I'm interested in anyone who gets to that level, which ends up being the black and white thing that spreads. But as someone who really cares about nuance and the truth, like I know that it's rarely ever one of those two things, but you need to simplify it for a message to get to many, many people. So I would say that's one thing I've probably changed my mind on, in terms of just like, I feel like Bitcoin was always going to be like the number one thing if crypto was ever going to be around, and probably is still going to be the case, but I'd probably have less conviction in that now than I did from 2 years ago, let's say a year ago from today. And that's not to say I haven't sold my Bitcoin, right? Like I still have it all, but I'm not necessarily like looking at it as like, oh, that's where people are developing the stuff that I think needs to be developed. And because of that closed-mindedness for a lot of people, I haven't seen that happen. At the same time, I will say someone like Jack Dorsey, who's building Web 5 in air quotes with Square, and is going to be using Bitcoin, I think, as the base layer for all the stuff they're doing. Maybe it'll be someone like him who actually does make something. But what I like about that is they're actually building real applications. They're not just saying you're evil for liking this other thing. They're actually building technology. So that's kind of one thing I've probably changed my mind on a little bit since we've been doing this pod anyway.
Love
cool.
it.
Yeah. All right, I will. I think you're right for a little time. We've got a few more. Should we just?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, cool. I'll come back to my one again in a second because I was just chatting here. All right, this one's quite an interesting one. Denny asks, "What are the biggest, most valuable things you've learned from each other?" I have a few in mind, and I can include Trung in this as well. I don't know if anything's come to mind. If it's going to be too hard to do it, if you need time to think, we can also skip this one.
I got one
right,
immediately,
cool.
But you go.
All right, go on. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, mine's going to be fast. It's like, I think the cool thing about doing this has been like letting people sort of lean into their own strengths, and like I have resisted building a team for anything just because I just like can't be bothered telling people what to do. And this context has just been like, if you find the right people and just show up, good stuff happens. Like the level of trust in just knowing, maybe not even knowing, like the trust that comes from like having these like skills that are naturally different, or perspectives that are naturally different, makes something that you couldn't make by yourself. So
yeah,
maybe that's
point.
Maybe that's not a specific lesson. It's been more of a
like learning from the experience, though. Yeah,
and it's because you start something together. It's different too, right? When you build something by yourself and then you bring people into it, it's like you always feel like weirdly protective of it, or I do at least. I shouldn't say
definitely
everybody, but it's like I don't know if like this is changing the DNA of the thing, or it's like messing with what made it work in the first place.
Yeah.
You're gonna start something with people, and you all contribute equally, and you all have like slightly different perspectives and skills, which I think we have. It's made me more open to, working with people on stuff, which has been a great
that's
lesson.
A great way to put it. Yeah. I think that's an interesting one. Also, specifically, I'd say us three starting something together is not the same. So like for me personally, I'm just saying working with you two is very different to working with, let's say, 2 employees or even 2 people in my team, or like a contractor, right? Because the power dynamic is, there's no power dynamic. We're all equal, right? So there's that side, which is mostly a good thing, but also like in terms of like decision making and getting stuff done, sometimes having a hierarchy does help as well. The other thing is you're also not just 2 random people. You're both like creative people who, put stuff on the internet, right? So I think we all share that in common. And I think with that comes like a mutual respect between all of us. Like, we all know we get certain things. We know, like, when someone writes a stupid comment, it doesn't really get to us because we're like, oh, we've seen 1,000 of those, right? Or if something goes wrong, we're all like, oh, that's fine. It's not end of the world. And I think specifically with a podcast, for me, going from Creator Lab, where it's just me, and I have editors and stuff as well, but there's no one. I'm the one who's saying do it in this way, and I want it at a certain standard. You work with me, like, I'm doing the sound check, and I'm making sure as close as we can, make it as good as we can. But honestly, since we've done NIA, I've like allowed myself to be like, oh, it doesn't have to be 10 out of 10 every single time in terms of like audio quality, sound, whatever. It just needs to be good enough, which is generally something I believe in. But I think with Creator Lab, it was always something that I could stand out with that. So when everyone else was just doing stuff on Zoom, I was doing it in person, and I was doing it on proper like cameras, and I was doing 10 hours of research to do one interview and stuff like that. So but when I work with you guys, it's like, well, no, we're not all me. I know that, and I know I'm a little crazy in my own way. So I need to, work towards what you guys have as strengths, and make sure it's not too, annoying, essentially, right? To be like, yo, make sure we get this fixed, whatever. And so there's a balance there of doing that as a three, than just doing it on my own.
For context, it took about 9 months to get Trung to buy a mic, and didn't sound like a tin can.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it took 70 something episodes, 60 something episodes. Yeah, so I think that's a good example of like, if that was my own, just me on the podcast. Like, even I've basically, most guests now, like, now I've become more chill with it, but for a long time, if a guest didn't have a mic, it was just going to sound shit. So I just didn't want to do that interview for a long time.
Fair enough.
So it's just like, over time I've learned, to be able to, just make it good enough and prioritize our output here. And, really what people are coming for is us three, and like making sure we're well researched and spend time preparing, but also like it just needs to be good enough, especially on the sound and all that stuff side. I will say, if we were doing this as a business, it would be a different thing. If we were like, we've got a plan to grow to this size, all those things do add up over time and they compound. So I'm not against them in principle. It's just like, I'm putting it in its place. Like, this is one part of my life of many different things.
But like the activities that keep the momentum up are prioritized over, like the things
the little details.
You putting stuff out.
Exactly. And then the other thing I'll say, just real quickly, that was just in general from working with you guys, but then specifically for each of you, I'll say, like, Trung, one of the things I've learned is the dangers of Red Bull. But apart from that, there's also, I will say that when you talk to Trung about writing, I obviously did another podcast with him recently on Creator Lab. If you're interested, it's like an hour and a half or something like that of us talking about his process and stuff. And like, there's stuff that came out in there that I hadn't heard in our weekly chats. And just hearing him think about like every tweet in one of those threads needs to have context. He's like, if it's taken out of context, that one tweet, someone just reads that one tweet, it needs to give context on its own. And that idea, it's not just about tweeting, it's that level of detail. Packaging, exactly. And I know how, serious he takes it, which I love and respect, right? And that is how I treat most creative stuff as well. And hearing him talk about writing specifically is, I've always appreciated, like when we do the title, like he spits it out very quickly, pretty much. I might adjust like one or two things once in a while, but like his skill of doing that has come from doing hundreds of thousands of reps of writing stuff, right? So, and obviously for you, you are the best person I know at like simplifying stuff, right? Whether it's in an actual visual or when we're talking about the name of the pod or what the pod's going to be, that is something I obviously respect a lot as well. And I think has been good to kind of get that experience working with you guys on that as well.
Yeah, and I would cap this question off with, there would not be one episode of Not Investment Advice without Bilal and his
appreciate it, mate,
organizational skills. So
no, I appreciate it. I definitely brought it to life in that way as well, for sure, man. But yeah, appreciate it. A good question from Denny. I think it was Denny. And we've got another question from Chris. said, as a group and as NIA, what are some of the forms of media you'd like to explore, e.g. ad-supported newsletter, live streaming, AMAs? It would be good to have Trung's take on this too, but I'll just say quickly from my point of view, when we first started it, it was like a complete experiment. And right now it's basically just become like something we all enjoy doing. We're not really doing it to like, you know, grow to a certain level, to sell ads, like all that sort of stuff. Like we actively are not taking those opportunities for the moment. I do think in the crypto bull market, there was probably an opportunity to do like, let's say a newsletter on crypto and explaining things in very simple terms, because I think for a podcast you can be quite broad, and we are a bit more broad of what we're doing. But for something like a newsletter, like to be like, oh, you're going to learn about crypto every day or every week, I think that it still probably is a huge opportunity for that. Obviously, like Sean is now doing that with Milk Road, and they're doing a great job of it. But I thought that was always a massive opportunity for someone to actually build a proper company from. I don't know if that would be something we do, because I think for us, we're all doing our own things. But who knows in the future. And the other thing is, community-wise, live streaming, I think is interesting, because we basically do this in one take. We don't really edit much. And I think that's something we should definitely try at some point. We've got the green screen, we've got the stream deck. Like, I think we would enjoy doing it potentially. It's just for people to know though, like it does take more energy. Like if something goes wrong right now, we can cut it out. And sometimes that happens, like the signal goes or the mic messes up or whatever. And live, you don't get that. And there's a certain like stress that comes from doing it. And I don't want to take away that fun feeling that we will have doing it every week. And then the last part is community. Like obviously we have a Telegram group. We've talked for ages about a Discord. Even Jack brought it up recently as well. That would be something potentially to add in the medium term as well.
You covered it, mate. That was good.
All right, cool. All right, perfect. All right. I think we only got a few left here. I'll just answer this one real quick. Someone asked, Danny asked, Bilal, what is your process for doing research for Creator Lab? I'll answer that very quickly, or as quickly as I can. So it's actually changed quite a lot recently. I'm trying to actively do less, because it used to take me just ages. And just to fit it in my life, I've basically been streamlining that quite a lot. But generally speaking, for like 95% of the interviews I've done, I like mostly interviewing people I already know of or I'm interested in. And so over time, I'm already consuming some of this stuff. Like before Jack and I did an interview, I was already a fan of your stuff on Instagram. And so if there was stuff that I liked, I would save it. Sam Parr, I was listening to My First Million for ages, and every time there was something interesting, I would add like a note in Evernote and just say Sam Parr podcast prep is like the template I have for the name podcast prep, so I can remember to search for it later. And I'll just add in little notes over time. And then whenever I book that person, because that kind of is like my signal to go and book that person, once I get them, then I go back to it. I end up listening to podcasts. Nowadays, I use that app Snipped, I was saying, to save moments where I want to revisit that. Then I put that all into, Evernote or Google Doc, and I piece together the parts that are most interesting. And I'm trying to find new stuff. So that's the second part, is asking the guests, obviously. I don't know if I did it with you, but normally I would ask, are there things you haven't spoken about elsewhere, or things that are top of mind right now that you're interested in talking about? Because that's the new stuff that's going to be exciting for that person to speak about. So as a podcast host, my job is to just get that person excited, get them sharing the stuff that they're passionate about, like interested in. And then while we're in the conversation, I'll take it down tangents. But that's kind of how I think of it, as like a base layer of like structure. And then my style is very conversational, so it naturally becomes kind of this middle ground. And I've put this on Twitter before, but I always think of my interview style as there's like conversations, which is what you do with your friends at dinner. There's interviews, which are like very question and answer, and mine's like very much in the middle. I have like a structure where it's conversational, but I don't like go, it's not like Joe Rogan where he's like talking about monkeys and apes and then talking about doing DMT. Like it is for a purpose. And on the business side, I feel like people want to know like stuff that's useful that they can actually implement and use for their own life. So that's kind of my approach. So that was that. And just to close us out here, I think we got one or two more. I don't know if you can share this because you were just talking about these companies. Logan asked, any US-based companies in early stages worth looking at for working for? Looking at basically. I don't know if anything comes to mind for you. I would have said somewhere like a Figma or something in the last few years, but I would say it's quite hard to answer that question without knowing like who that person is, their skill set, their financial situation,
what you care about.
What you care about, yeah. So there's not really any for me like that I would especially call out, but I would say if you're really early in your career, the need for money and like having a base is important, but you can afford to like do more riskier stuff and just like, you know, go and learn. I also think this really depends if you're a technical person or like a business person, because it's very different in startups. Is there anyone coming out for you there, Jack?
Yeah, I agree with you on like it's highly dependent on the person. I think there are like a lot of really like bizarre challenges in the world of Web3 that are like still well funded from last year that have that are hiring people. LooksRare.
Oh yeah.
Hiring.
Okay.
Yeah, I think yeah. So it's like a risk appetite thing, and I think maybe the like meme now is swinging to AI. You know, we had crypto, NFTs. Now we're in the AI part of the macro tech trend is AI. So you're going to see a bunch of things pop up there. So my I don't know, my advice or my instinct would be like choose a job based on what you can learn that will be transferable versus like this very specific vertical, right? Like you, Bilal, in your career understand like how to acquire customers, and it doesn't matter what industry or vertical or software company you end up working in as a function of that. And some people will approach that completely different, right? Like I want to work on rockets or aerospace or whatever.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Versus like
my
the function,
door, versus like I'm just want to have like a skill that is transferable across all of these different things. And I think that both of those approaches will work in any business too. Like one is obviously restricted by the industry, but the other is just like a mentality when you're in there, like what am I learning that is just a fundamental set of skills that's transferable elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a good point. Could I ask, you know what, you've worked in so many different companies like over the years, and then you've done like your own freelance agency stuff, and now you do your own stuff now fully with Visualize Value. You know, like those big moments where you moved like to a new company or something and you're trying to figure out the next step, like how would you usually think about it? And has that like changed now?
I think I just had like a idiotic appetite for risk, basically, is one of my answers. Like one, because I was already in the States. So it was basically a test run from the beginning. It was like, I'll go and try this thing out. And I did a lot of like extremes. So I would go from like, I worked at my first agency job, as 5 people worked there. And then I went to work at an agency with 13,000 people. So it was like, I would go like the ends of the barbell basically. And then I worked for, an agency where I'd work on 15 client projects a quarter, and then I would go work in-house at a brand where you're doing the same thing over and over again. And basically just like filling out all the blind spots in all these different areas. Like, I think in hindsight, that's really like, I had an itch for novelty. So every like 9 months, I'd be like, I'm bored. I need to do something else. And sometimes that was, I think it was both the work and the environment that I tried to get different exposure to. And most of it was just a function of like hoping that the same shit I was frustrated with wouldn't be true somewhere else. It was like, oh, this is smaller, so it won't be like that. But then you get there and it's like, oh, there's a different thing that's frustrating about this. And then eventually just got to the point where it's like you're 10 or 11 jobs in, you're like, okay, I can find fault with all of this. Let me try and do something myself. And then you fail a bunch of times and you realize a lot of the things that you were frustrated with are just a function of the way certain things work. In agency businesses in particular, where it's like you're pitching to middle managers that have like weird incentive structures. You don't really have that much control. And I worked for tech companies that weren't like, they were in New York. It wasn't like, I never got the exposure to like proper Silicon Valley technology culture. So I can't really comment on that accurately. But I think there's obviously an incredible amount to learn in environments like that, where the responsibility you have is just obscene, and you're in the room for conversations at the like business operations level. So it took me like 5 years to ever get to a point where it was like, here's the spreadsheet that breaks down what we're charging for this job and what we're going to make. It took me so long to get there.
You mean from the agency side, you mean, yeah?
Correct.
So you're like the P&L, you're seeing the P&L, like this designer is costing X amount.
Yeah. It took so long to get there. Or like, it just took so long to kind of get it into your head, because I might have even like laid out like budget slides and stuff like that when I was starting out. But there was also this like weird culture of like keeping that hidden. Yeah. Versus I think in technology, it's way more a part of the culture. It's like, this is how many users we have. This is how many users we need. You're so much closer to the market. And that's like, you want to learn fast, get as close to the market as you can.
Yeah, that's a great point there. Like, just like, because you're getting exposure to something which is, again, with the goal of, I want to do this myself one day, right? That's probably the lens we're looking at it. But in general, like, to accelerate learning, I'll say similarly for me, like, one of the jobs I probably learned the most in was my first job at Google before I got promoted and got into bigger clients on paper and brands you would have heard of. There was basically the mid-market sales. They kind of got rid of this division. Eventually, they like merged it into the big part. But I was basically talking at 21 years old to people that were in the category of spend for Google. That was the top tier, but you'd probably not heard of most of the companies. So they were actually the best sort of companies for someone like me, because they were like small to medium-sized businesses that were making millions. Yeah. And I'm basically this 21-year-old kid who knows a little bit about like internet stuff, and they don't. So I'm able to like add value from day one. But then they're like, yeah, well, I remember this one guy, he was a Rolls-Royce engineer, and he ended up like randomly selling like beauty products on the internet, and it grew into this like big business. And I remember they would like give you access to Google Analytics, and I would see, it's basically the accountancy of the web, right? Like, you're seeing where your traffic comes from, how much you paid for it, or if it was free, what is working.
What you made off it,
Where the opportunities are. Are there countries that people and I would then get access to, say, Google data, where I'm looking at, okay, there's 1 million people searching for this in Sweden, but you are not serving Sweden and you're not ranking organically. So maybe that's an area we can flip that on the switch for you, and I would directly see the impact of it. And that was honestly so satisfying, because as you probably know by now, if you listen to this, I love business and like the power of the entrepreneur as much as anyone. And for that guy to have like 3, 4, 5 employees and to be able to pay them because of something we ended up identifying was like really, really like gratifying. At the same time, it was like learning those skills of like, what would that person, you're basically going in their head for a day, right? Or for the quarter or for a year, or however long you work with them. And yeah, so I would say something like that, where you're actually getting exposed to a lot of different businesses, for me was like really, really helpful. And like, it was called sales, but like it was mostly like consultative stuff. It was more like, oh, you're doing this one thing, how can you do it better? And I'll show you, oh, I found this opportunity, it's going to work better for you. Now you don't really get that as much, especially at like Google. I know those people serve me and my company, and they're like just reading off a screen, like, here's 7 things you should be doing. But like in 2010, there was none of that built out, so you're manually pulling it yourself.
And that's I think where the like analogy to the old marketing and advertising agency comes in, right? It's like the business gets so mature, there's so many people involved at that point, where it's like not everybody is this like scrappy on the data, like has a one-on-one relationship with the principle of the business they're serving. That was the one thing that like clicked for me, where I was like,
the decision maker.
The difference between like pitching to somebody who's just trying not to get fired to like somebody who's like responsible for the P&L. And there's, in some ways you could say like it's hard to, like, you have to have a skill set that is almost like full stack to get that opportunity in many ways, right? Where you're having the conversation, you're taking the information from that conversation and you're producing an outcome, versus in a bigger environment, you take the information and then you give that information to someone else.
You pass it on to someone else.
Someone else who gives it to, who tries to, and there's definitely businesses that are like incredibly capable of doing that. But for the most part, like when you're trying to learn stuff, if you're like 10 steps removed from the function that you're trying to make happen in whatever it is, it's really hard to learn that way. And you actually learn like opposite, or you learn like the wrong stuff. You learn how
to do the bad
alive.
stuff.
Yeah, you learn how to keep alive in the business versus like get the result. And that was like how I came out of the gate as an agency owner, was like, we're going to do it different, man. We're, I called my agency opponent, like, we're skill over scale with this, with that. I was going after the same clients who were just like, yeah, that's all nice, but I'm not trying to get fired, Like,
they don't want things to change. Like most of because you assume, that's a great point. Like one example that comes to mind for me, again, like I can't say their name, but like a well-known, multinational retailer, let's say.
Yeah.
So I would be speaking to them, and they would I would speak to the CMO, and they're like, we're one company, like the brand and the retail and the omni-channel, like all these buzzwords. We're all moving towards the same beat, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. That sounds, and that's their job, right? Like to align people around this. And then you go and speak to each division head or whatever. And I literally had people, let's say the head of e-commerce would say, oh, that sale going to the store in Times Square or whatever, I don't want that happening from my paid ads because I don't get credit for that. And I get where they're coming from. Like you said, they're literally trying to save their jobs, and they're trying to hit their number to report up to that same boss who said we all should be on the same page. And then I would be like, all right, I get what you're saying. But then I'd go speak to that main person again and say, like, without obviously like snitching on people, I'd basically be like, hey, this is some of the challenges. Like, people are in their silos and you're not being able to give, it's kind of that person's problem, because they've said one thing, but the incentives they've designed have not accounted for them. So they saying we're all working together, but the person's bonus is being paid on hitting an e-commerce goal. So it's just those sort of things. It's like very difficult to actually, like, it makes sense as an idea, but until you kind of like see it in practice, you're like, oh, that is that person who's just scared like everyone else, like of losing their job. They just want to get promoted. They want to buy that extra car and like do whatever it is in their normal life. And that's quite a hard thing, especially as someone who's like entrepreneurial, because you just assume everyone should be working towards the same thing. And I find that a lot with like people who come from smaller companies to big companies, like that experience is a big difference as well, right? Like you're seeing all the politics play out. Mm-hmm. And so it sounds exactly what you were kind of mentioning there.
Yeah, and like the other thing I will say, to be like fair on overall conversation, is working at that 13,000 person company. After I left, I had way more empathy for how incredible it is to grow that thing. To make that thing as big as it was, to build those relationships, to employ 13,000 people. Like, it's an amazing feat in itself, but it comes with like certain externalities as a function of this thing, right? But it did start 2 people in a garage hustling on the phone, like running down contracts, pretending to be more like established than they were until they got there.
Faking it till they make it sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's like, I think even if you have some like revolutionary, amazing piece of technology, like, Google search or any like piece of software that's come out in the last 20, 30 years, at your success kind of starts to hamper you after a certain amount of time, because you're pulling talent from the market that, not everybody has that experience of like starting the business from scratch, doing 10 roles or 15 roles.
By definition, you're kind of hiring people who aren't those people. Like you need them to be big company people, and that comes with like expertise of being able to manage it all. But and then also the negative side of like playing the politics, and like I remember just last one I mentioned. I remember again, I won't say anyone's names here, but a salesperson who came from traditional, let's say like publishing or something like that. Like a client told us, oh, hey, yeah, we're going to spend this amount of money on, let's say, YouTube. And I was like, oh, great. I write in my notes and we're going back to our boss. I was going to say, oh, yeah, they're going to spend this amount. And that person was like, no. You don't say that straight away. Like we got to now create a little pitch and make it look like we basically like we're the ones who convinced them to do this thing. And and it's like, I get it. Like, but in my head, that was one of the moments I was like, oh, I can't do this long term. Like, I'm not doing that. That's just a stupid, that you're going to be playing this game just to show the work you're doing versus just being like, oh, cool, this thing happened. It's good for all of us. And that sort of stuff like got to my head so much.
Yeah,
man.
There's definite like crazy pros and cons to that too. Like you can get really comfy and there's amazing perks in the world like that too. Where you're like flying about, staying in the Ritz, eating the best food in America, just going and like, walking into conference rooms and
gluttony,
dazzling, like here's this incredible vision for this thing. But it's also, you also like, Celia likes to remind me of this all the time. It's like you were working just as much then because you're still getting home and be like, oh, I got to get this thing ready. I got to do that. Like I always romanticize this idea of like, oh, if I had a job, I could just clock out at 5 or 6 o'clock. It's like, you're not going to do that. It's just like who you are.
That's true.
Right? It doesn't change. It's like you're just making a decision about how much risk you want to take and what you want to be responsible for. You can build an amazing career both ways. Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with doing that for sure. But I get you. It's definitely like a different approach, man. All right, mate. I think we can call it here. That was a good way to finish off.
Yeah, it was a good one. That was good.
Thanks for everyone submitting questions in Telegram. If you're not already in there, make sure you click the show notes and you can get in there. I'll also say, make sure you drop a comment on YouTube because we've been getting some funny ones. I'll read one out. Comment of the week. Arctic Cali said, "Ed must be going well. You guys are starting to look like rich rappers," which we shared that. One of you guys shared that in the group chat. I was cracking up about that. So we appreciate. Drop the comments. I know you guys drop a comment on Telegram too, which is great. But just click over to YouTube, drop a comment, let us know what you thought of this. Obviously it helps the algo too. So smash the like button, all that good stuff, and we will see you next week on the next one. Trung will be back too. All right, cheers.